Absolutely. It sounds like we're reliving history again because we didn't bother to read it the first time and understand it. It's utterly ridiculous what's going on today. I'll give it to you from my perspective, Brigitte. My mother and father were both World War II veterans. My mother was in North Africa as a nurse prior to Normandy. My father fought in North Africa, Normandy, Battle of the Bulge, Remagen Bridge, Anzio, and Berlin. And my father didn't talk much about the war, but he did talk about getting to Berlin finally and meeting up with the Russian army, their allies. Let me repeat, their allies, the Russian army. And my father told me how wonderful these Russian people were. And then lo and behold, the war is barely over and they're now our enemies. Why did they become our enemies? I believe this is the reason why. Because Russia was a socialist country. We were being run by capitalist Wall Street. Well, Wall Street's biggest fear is anything socialized, socialism. So therefore, before World War II was even hardly finished, we're already now against our Russian allies who truly did the major lifting in defeating the Nazis and winning World War II on the on the European front, I should say. So now we go through the Cold War, all of this that I had to live through, duck and cover and all this, and we come up to present day when truly we ought to look finally at what would it be like to be friends with Russia. After all, they're not communists now, are they? So there's no excuse for it. They are capitalists now, just like we are. Why not be friends? Let's see what we can accomplish as friends. We can always go back to being enemies. Governments use scare tactics like this to handcuff you and take away your freedom. They try to tell you they're doing it to protect you. That's their standard excuse. Oh, we're protecting you, but in order to protect you, we have to take away your freedom. It reminds me of a joke I saw one time where it showed a family of four sitting down at dinner and they're all saying, gee, I sure feel safe now. And in the cartoon, they're all inside a jail cell. Well, of course you're safe. And if you're asking the government to protect you and the only way they can protect you is by taking your freedom, I got news. I would rather be free and unprotected than protected and be put in jail.
Causes have the right to be defended, and that Americans cannot defend freedom abroad if they can't even defend it at home. Governor, why is it so important to have influential people in the media like Murrow who can question those who are in power?
Because it gives the people the opportunity to hear another view of the situation. The more views of any situation, the better off you are. If you simply hear everything that happens in the world has at least two stories by it, if not three, four, or five. If you're only hearing one side of a story, how can you possibly make an intelligent decision about the story if you're not getting all the facts? Kudos to Ed for saying all that stuff, because that's the point. You know, when we sit here and say you're unpatriotic because you protest, you're unpatriotic unless you stand for the national anthem and all that type of stuff, let's remember something. Patriotism cannot be mandated by a government. It must be earned by the government. And mandating patriotism is a dangerous, dangerous thing, and we're facing that right now.
And we look back at Murrow now as if he was a hero, but today, when you're in the media, a member of the media, what happens if you call out Russian hysteria?
You'll probably lose your job. You'll be censored because our media today, quote, our mainstream media in America, they're not doing their job. They were supposed to be the fourth branch of government, the branch of government that keeps an eye on the judicial, the legislative, and the executive branch and reports to the people. But when they're controlled by the very branches of government they're supposed to be keeping an eye on, that is the downfall of the United States as we know it. We need a free media, and right now we don't have it. Why? Because they're all owned by these massive corporations who are likewise running our country. And what is the definition of that? It's called fascism.
So what is the point of Red Scare hysteria? Why in America, where we're a country that cherishes the free expression of ideas, do people so vehemently oppose communism or any Russian point of view?
Because they've been brainwashed. Since you've been a little child going to school today, I lived through it, you were given the opinion, Russia bad, United States good. You were only getting one side of the story, weren't you? You need 2, 3, and 4 sides to that story to make a decision.
How is the fear-mongering right now shaping our political landscape?
Tremendously. That's all it is. I mean, look what you got out there. When these people are called rapists and all this other stuff and criminals and all that, you know, that's fear-mongering. That's governing by fear. And then you look at the situation with Russia now. Russia's now capitalistic. There is no reason anymore. And yet I hear Mitch McConnell say, Russia's no friend of ours. Well, why not? Imagine what we could do. I think Vladimir Putin subtly is crying out for the friendship, and we're slamming the door in his face. Why? For what? Well, you got to look. The United States needs an enemy. We have to have an enemy to feed what? The military-industrial complex, which takes up roughly 50% of your tax dollars, goes to wage war. It's that simple. And so they're going to do whatever they can to keep bringing in their money, their end of the taxes. The only way they can do that is to have you scared and think there's a red menace out there out to get you, just like they did in the 50s when they all had us doing duck and cover. A lot of good that's going to do if the bomb gets dropped on you.
It's time for a quick break. When we return, CIA whistleblower John Kiriakou joins me to discuss the art of threat creation. Stay tuned. In 2007, John Kiriakou became the first government official to confirm CIA torture tactics, including waterboarding. He's one of few people who has been charged and jailed in connection with the torture program, not for committing any torture himself, but for leaking classified information to the press. Over the course of his 14-year career in the agency, he served as an analyst and counterterrorism officer. He joins me now live. John, thank you so much for being here.
Happy to do it.
So from an intelligence agency insider's perspective, is there an art to creating a threat?
Oh, yes. An intelligence agency or an intelligence community has to have a threat around which to rally, because that's how budgets are determined and that's how manpower is allocated. So what good is an intelligence agency if there's no threat to counter? And you know, in the United States, we can go back even before the creation of the CIA in 1947. From the beginning of the 20th century, we've always had to have an ism, let's say, to rally against, whether it was anarchism or socialism or communism or Islamism. Well, we're rallying against Russianism right now, is what it really comes down to.
Right. So the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, and the communist movement sort of died out then. Why is it then that Russia is still such a threat to the United States?
Honestly, I don't think Russia is a threat to the United States. I think Russia very easily could be a partner of the United States, whether it's a defense partner or a counterterrorism partner or even an economic and trade partner.